our meeting to order. Will you please stand for the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are now in what is considered a public meeting, and we'll have a presentation describing the repair reserve fund for the purpose of expending funds from the reserve, and we'll go on from there.
Okay. Good evening. The purpose of the repair reserve is to pay for costs of repairs that do not reoccur annually, and those are for like capital improvements and equipment and things like that. Back on December 11th, we had a severe windstorm that damaged the roof above the auditorium, the southwest corner. About 1/3 of the roof was completely torn off, and 2 air dampers that were on that roof in that section were also damaged and destroyed and needed to be replaced. Basically, the roof failed because the fascia that was installed about 20 years ago failed. It was nailed down, not screwed in, anchored into the steel. Phase 1, we were looking at 2 phases for this roof. Phase 1 is the actual damage section, and then phase 2 we were considering is the rest of the roof, the 2/3 remaining. Phase 1, our costs are about $270,120. We've already had the board approve the architect, construction manager, and the contractor costs, which totaled the $270,120. Being an emergency project, we can go about this a little bit differently for capital projects because it's an emergency, you have to act right away, and then all the paperwork and SED approval comes after the fact. But we still need to do our due diligence with these costs to try to minimize those. The funding for this, we're still waiting to hear something official from our insurance, general liability insurance company. We did have an estimate that was approximately $101,000, $101,699.40 about a month ago, and we've submitted additional information and are still waiting to hear the result of that. And that leaves a balance of about $169,120 left. If that's where it does come in, we have approximately a little over $140,000 left in our repair reserve fund, $141,859.03. So between for using the balance of that $169,000, we're proposing to use $140,000 from the repair reserve, and then the balance from the general fund of up to $29,120. The balance after the repair reserve, if these numbers stayed as is, where we didn't get any more insurance proceeds, would only be $1,859.03. At year end, we will seek to replenish the repair reserve. We've had a few emergencies. Last year, the middle school elevator. This year, the roof at the high school. So we know these expenditures do occur without notice here. Phase 2 that we were considering, and we discussed this at our last Buildings and Grounds meeting. Yes, the estimate right now is just under $400,000. Insurance has pretty much told us they're not going to cover any of that, so the decision was not to proceed with phase 2, just take care of the damaged section of the roof. And that concludes the funding, the expenditure for the repair reserve. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So do you, for the second phase of repair on the roof, how necessary or unnecessary is that? I mean, what condition is that other 2/3?
it's same, potential, same for, damage.
With nailing, it wasn't nailed down correctly
Correct.
and whatever?
Yes, so, our risk is similar to phase one. If there's an issue that comes up in the next 2-3 years, we're looking to make this part of our next capital project, but if something arises in the next 2 or 3 years, insurance proceeds, we'd follow the same thing, with that.
Do you know how old the roof is?
It's about 20 years.
And how do you feel about leaving the, repair reserve only at $1,800?
Well, it's good to have, that we had 140,000 left. We are anticipating a surplus, so we should be able to replenish that back to the levels where it was, at the beginning of the school year.
And this, 29,000 from the general fund?
Yeah, so again, if that just lowers our year-end transfer, that we would be able to replenish the repair reserve from, so it's part of the surplus in our general fund.
Okay.
So Scott, the plan is the balance after the transfer will be 1859, but that's pending additional possible fund balance to then replenish that, right?
Fund
So it's-
balance, and if we didn't get any more insurance proceeds.
So it's quite likely it won't end up at that amount, but we need to, it's a very conservative.
Correct.
Any other questions? Guess not. Thank you, Scott.
All right.
I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So,
Motion made by Mr. Marucci. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Roll. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Marucci?
yes.
Mr. Roll? Mrs. Lemon? Yes. Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mrs. Yu?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. This is, I guess it must be coming under consent. Or new business. Okay, now we'll come into the regular meeting, and first item on the agenda is public to be heard. Now, our rules are such that people that want to speak to us prior to the, or during our public to be heard, have to sign up by Friday prior to the meeting. And I do have a request of a citizen that wants to speak to us about a specific topic. The only problem that we're having with this is that there were 2 other people that requested to speak this evening, and we said no, that they couldn't unless, because they didn't sign up in time also. So I have to say, unfortunately, we won't be able to allow this person to speak to us. Don't want to set any precedent or break any of our policy, but I will say that we are going to have a discussion about what this citizen would like to speak to us about, and we will have a remedy for her during the meeting. Okay? So we will go on to, other than that, no other public to be heard that signed up by the rules. Good news, and I am so excited all the time to see how much everybody has jumped on this good news banner. I felt bad the last time we had good news to speak of, and there was so much of it. I can find it. So much of it that I sort of passed it by. And it's right here. And so, as you can see, I have 2 full pages of good news that all the board has read. I would really like the public to know about it, but what I'm just going to do is read from the schools as to who submitted good news and thank them so much for sending it. But the board does read all the good news. From Jackson Primary, Emily Edgerton wrote in about Mrs. Newman's class. Maureen Nataro wrote in about counseling and mental health staff at Jackson is top notch. From John Kennedy, Katrina Cox gave a shout out to Cheryl Wagner from the parents who attended the adult ENL class. Heather McCarthy, every Monday of Women's History Month, began a video announcements with a passage from books. Melissa Calandra, our STEAM program invites families into the building for the annual grade level events throughout the year. John, from the Batavia Middle School, John Martin Cannon, he'd like to give a shout out to Mrs. Susan Buckley and the Middle School Drama Club for their fantastic performance of Beauty and the Beast. Elizabeth Volpe, she and Mrs. Reimer are proud of their SOAR group. Colin Murtaugh, the MIOSM concert was a success. From Batavia High, Allison Chua, Mr. Head started an electronic game club this month in March. Thomas Redband, our entrepreneurship class competed in the virtual business Glow Trade Fair at GCC. And Brennan Briggs, we have had a number of our student athletes really pushing themselves in the weight room before school and after school. So thank you for all this terrific good news. I'm always really excited to read about what's going on in the district, and everybody appreciates everyone spending their time sending in the good news. So we will now go to presentations. The first one is Julia Rogers, Community Schools Update.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm excited to tell you about what we've been up to at community schools in the past year.
Left side.
As you know, we created a mission and vision last year with our advisory board, and throughout all of our work this year, we have been keeping this vision and mission in mind. We are never forgetting that our purpose is to break down the barriers for our students, families, neighbors, and our community at large. Our work focuses on these 4 pillars, and we are always interweaving these 4 pillars together. As of April 8th, we have 165 partners in the community. These partnerships are beginning to become reciprocal in nature and thus strengthening the benefits to our students and our families. One example of this collaboration is the Richmond Library, the YWCA, and community schools held a book study on Wednesday evenings, and Upstate Farms Culture Products heard about it and had offered yogurt free of charge for the snack during that time. As part of our intent to include partners in our planning and to have a stake in what we are doing at community schools, we have developed a partnership task force. This task force assists with the planning and preparation of activities that, again, break down the barriers that families and children may have towards education. Subcommittees from our advisory board developed goals for our focus this year. We had an informational meeting, for instance, this winter, and are researching a regional swap program that are already being done in Erie and Monroe counties, and seeing how it works so that we can bring the concept to community schools. Expanded and enriched learning opportunities also include enrichment activities such as after school, weekend, and summer programming, and emphasizing real-world learning and community problem solving. These just show a snapshot of how we have started in this work. We plan to increase the student and parent as well as community programming opportunities over the next year. When families are more involved in decisions about their children's education, the students thrive. So you can see how our expanded and enriched learning activities also connect with our goals as part of our family and community engagement. Our community closet has a variety of items, and now with our partnership with the BCSD Foundation, Inc. and Food Link, we will have more food, paper supplies, and other items available to offer our families. We have assisted students a lot this year. 3,000 times children have been helped by the community closet this year. This represents 317 different families. In addition, we provide advocacy, referrals to school and community resources, and a positive person to talk privately with. I'd like to now give a shout out to Julie Wazalewski, our district social worker, who has really been working very hard at this, and her 2 interns. Our community school's goal is to impact each child in the Batavia City School District. A typical Thursday afternoon. We are starting to use our Family and Community Engagement Center and the space it's in more and more every day. On Thursdays, our New York State mentoring pilot for students in grades 8 and 11 runs from 3:30 to 4:30. Students are really connecting with one another, and they are brainstorming how we can work together as 8th and 11th graders. One idea that has come out of this is that the upperclassmen would like to show the underclassmen what the high school's like. And they are planning a visit so that we could visit the high school in June, so that these 8th graders have a jump start on seeing the high school in the eyes of their mentors. And then that goes from 3:30 to 4:30. And then at 5:30, we have parents whose second language is English. Their first language is a different language. They attend an English conversational class with one of our ENL teachers on Thursday evenings. Our integrated student supports address the out-of-school issues for students and families, such as mental and physical health, and again, helping remove those learning barriers. As part of this, one of the things that you will have seen, hopefully, is our BMS Parent Finding Respect Task Force that the middle school and community schools have partnered together with. We also have developed a calendar of events. This allows the community to access all of the wonderful things that are happening in our local area, and then also allows families to reach out to us for additional assistance if they need help with fees or if they have ideas of other things that need to occur in our community. From summer to fall, winter to spring, we have been collaborating with our partners and our families and are encouraging our children to advocate for themselves and for others. And this is just a little snapshot of all the different things that have been going on since we began last year, including Mr. Rebsey and this night out event at St. Anthony's last year in the dunk tank for community schools. Our hope is to continue to strive to expand and reach and have more of an impact in our local Batavia community in the next year. And thank you to our students, because if it wasn't for our students, we would not be here. Thank you for the families who really give us the ideas of how we can help their children being their number one advocates, and to our community and partners. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
On the last page, you have expand upon or focus on breaking down barriers for families. Is that something, these things that you have listed here, something that your task force actually talks about?
Well, one of the goals of community schools is to break down barriers. So we do talk about all the different avenues that appear for families, and we try to navigate them. Julie Wazalewski hears about a lot in her location, but then we're planning our wellness fair for next week, and our community partners just jumped on the opportunity because they're seeing some barriers just with receiving different wellness opportunities, whether it's financial wellness or health wellness. They are hearing about it. So one of the examples that I can give you is families are having children who are scared of getting medical assistance because of the era we're in. And so we're having a teddy bear and doll clinic next Saturday, working with Rochester Regional's Healthy Living to help with that, and having an ambulance on site so that they can see what an ambulance is like. So I think just having those conversations is the biggest thing, and we are a forum for those conversations.
So your partnerships, you use them to help you support the things that you want to have done through the community.
Correct.
Do they ever come to you with an idea?
They do, and they have. And another example would be GCC. We have students attend GCC and take classes, but I am starting to work with the Students' Activity Council and some courses that require volunteerism for their students. And so we are going to be starting that reciprocal relationship with GCC and those opportunities too.
Okay. Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate all the information.
Yes.
Julia, just one thing. I just want to say, I don't want to say I'm speaking for everybody here, but great job.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
My
you.
clients get so much out of the empowerment, the help, the recognition that they're living. It's just amazing. It's awesome.
Well, and you've been easy to work with. I know I've worked with Julie not only to just get things going in there and get close sorted, but we had two people asking for assistance in baseball, and I was able to quickly call. It took all of 3 minutes to say, hey, I've got these 3 people. What do I do?
Right.
And it was done.
Yeah.
So it's been incredibly easy to work with.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. The next presentation is Julie Wazalewski, Primary Project. Please.
Okay, I've problem solved, so I'm using this.
Gina.
I didn't know there wasn't a podium, now the better this way. Okay.
It works. There you go. Right? Improvising.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. The reason we're here is to talk about Primary Project, and Primary Project is an evidence-based, nationally recognized, social and emotional school-based intervention, which we have at both Jackson School and John Kennedy School. And it serves grades K through 3. So, I'd like to introduce our team.
Hi, my name is David Canal. I'm the Child Associate for this program. I am the Child Associate at John Kennedy and Jackson.
And I'm Karina Beeman. I'm the school counselor at Jackson Primary, but I'm also one of the mental health supervisors for the program.
And also we have Eric Knapp, and he is the supervisor of David at John Kennedy. I wanted to say, with David, he is our, do you want to say, you're the child associate, and he's giving the direct.
I actually meet with the kids, and I actually give out the actual program guidelines. I do that all with the kids.
He's the direct service provider.
Yes.
And I'm Julie Wazalewski, and I used to say I'm the district social worker, but now I say I'm one of, the district social workers. So, well, as the youth of our country are facing a post-pandemic mental health crisis, I am so grateful that 3 years ago, Molly Corey had the foresight and the vision to lead us into a partnership with a community-based project with the Children's Institute. Thank you, Molly. So just in the nick of time, we decided that we needed another layer of social and emotional assistance for our children. So that's where we are right now, and Primary Project is a program which looks to the future while staying in the present. And I'm happy to say I'm going to turn the presentation over to the only male child associate direct service provider in New York State, David Kanat, also the heart and soul of our program.
So let's start out by saying, what is Primary Project? Primary Project is a school-based early intervention prevention program designed to enhance school-related competencies and reduce social, emotional, and school adjustment difficulties for children in kindergarten through 3rd grade.
So now we're lucky enough to have at Jackson and John Kennedy someone who is a foremost expert in the language and the work of children, play.
So, early memories of play. If we were to ask each of you to think back to your earliest memory of play, you may also think of words like freedom, explore, imagination, pretend, and create. Play allows us to take on roles of people you admire or inspire to become. Play is a part of a child's life. It is a way to test the world. My role as a child associate is to give each child I meet with the gift of my undivided attention for half an hour once a week. Thank you. So play is a life skill. Most skills children need to develop into functioning and caring adults originate from early play experiences. While we usually associate play with many joyful aspects, we should also recognize that play is another way children learn to master, manage, and cope with different emotions.
Yeah, play skills are so important for our students coming into school, especially for the first time. As Julie talked about with the pandemic, it's hit these kids hard, and I think they come in with not as many play skills as previous years, so we're really making that a priority at Jackson and John Kennedy, and to help them make green choices is what we call it at Jackson Primary, so positive choices throughout their school day, and to also help them be safe, respectful, responsible, which is, we use that language at Jackson and John Kennedy.
So the program actually gets them into a space where they're ready to learn and then can take the most advantage from all the opportunities that are in the classroom.
Yeah, there's many different types of skills that children can get out of play, such as social skills, perseverance, self-regulation, assertiveness, and healthy decision making.
Yeah, creativity, imagination.
There's so much, and that's what
Confidence.
confidence. Yes. Thank you. So, when looking at the rigor of a classroom setting, children are not always allowed the time needed for unstructured play. Primary Project benefits the child who needs that opportunity with hands-on play and imagination. In a world where electronics have taken on a big role, it is also important to replace the Chromebook and iPad with tangible toys and unstructured, expressive child-led play. The child sets the pace with the child associate, supporting and reflecting on what the child says and does to reinforce and build on the child's strengths. In the playroom, I use you statements. I constantly, if any decision that the child makes, if I keep saying, you, and I act like a mirror, so anything that the child does, I kind of, spit back at them, saying you, oh, you like to play with this type of toy. Oh, that, you started with a laugh once you made that toy do that. Constantly, hearing the child hearing you is one way for this program to work, because reflecting helps the child know that all the decisions they're making, they're the ones who are acting upon that, and they can take that into the classroom. Oh, I'm making this decision. I made that decision. So how children are selected for this program is through a careful scientific screening process. This is a team approach involving teachers, parents, and mental health professionals to seek out the best candidates for the program. Through early screening detections, such as for school adjustment difficulties, We check like the following: task orientation, assertiveness, behavior control, and peer social skills. And with ongoing consultation and program evaluation, it allows for continuous improvement of our program.
And to highlight this triangle for you a little bit more, as you can see on the bottom it says adjusted, and what basically that means is the children on the bottom of this pyramid essentially have your typical or average social skills. And above that you see primary project, those at-risk children, so those mild adjustment difficulties. So this doesn't service students that have high-risk emotional or mental health needs, or students with an already identified diagnosis, but our program is to prevent those kids from getting there. So giving a tier 2 intervention to those kiddos who just need a little bit of extra support.
The way I describe it the best way is that when I would go pick up a child in a classroom, I would be there to pick up Ches, and then Jen, Barbara, and John would all say, when is it my turn? When am I coming with you? That's what primary project is for. It's for the kids. Maybe that child in the classroom that has a lot going on at home, or is the quiet child in the classroom that would never be pulled for in-school counseling. This is their program. And by doing this, the hope is that the children would stay down here and then they would never move in. Oh boy. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, forget it.
I got you.
You know,
You got it.
all right. The high risk and, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, anyways, the other part that's really good is that now that we're like coming out of COVID and we can take a deep breath and we can really look and analyze, and we've been brainstorming. We had last month, everybody, fingers crossed, maybe she's watching, but Lynn Smith, she came in and she is a licensure, licensor for the program, and we're trying to get our national certification, so we're about 3/4 away through that process. And as we met with her and as we brainstormed, we started to talk about, whoa, you know what we have? We have one of the only ones, and I could be wrong, but one of the only whole cohort, meaning whole grade level, behavioral scales on the whole grade. And we started to think about, wow, we could use this for the MTSS process. We could use this for class placement. The sky's the limit on how we can use this data, which is so powerful. The only other time that I know that we have data on the whole cohort was in, kindergarten screening. So we started to think, wow, we have an opportunity here where we can use this for other things too.
So this is an example of what the data looks like. So what we use is the Teacher-Child Rating Scale, or TCRS for short. So like Julie said, each teacher, so if we would begin with one cycle in the beginning of the year, it would be with second grade. All the second grade teachers would complete a TCRS on all their students in their classroom. This is an example of Jackson, and this was from 1 year, but this is of all the kids that were selected for primary project. This is how they came into the program in the blue. And you can see that so this is the pre-test, and this is high risk is the red here, and then they're at risk here in the orange, and then standard and excellent over here. So most of the kids were very close to this risk section, and then at the end of the program, which is the green, which is the post-test, the teachers would take another test, and you can see that it pushes the kids up into that standard zone, which is what we want. This is from Jackson, and this was from past school year.
And when Lynn Smith came and the licensor came, she said that's your data, and we said yes, and she said that was remarkable. She was so proud of us because she said that some of the schools, I can't even imagine this, but she said some of the schools didn't even have their post data. They didn't even do it. They didn't even collect it. And I was like, what? And she told us that our data was remarkable, and we were all so proud, of what we had done. I also want to say the reason we put this picture in, this one here, knowing that the kids last year who were at home and were receiving virtual learning, that they were probably some of the most isolated children that we would have in the grades. We made a decision, and it was, I think, a really powerful decision. We made a decision that we would include the children that were at home in the play project. So we had to do some research, and we had to get some supervision on how do you do play therapy with kids that are at home and you're over the computer with them. So we had a grant, and we went out and we bought we bought
toy
kits.
boxes, yes.
Yeah, we bought kits, and we took them to the homes, and we met the kids, and they met David, and then we started working with the families at home, and that was another part that,
Yes, that's how we stayed inclusive of all the children. And,
yeah, we didn't
past
exclude
school year.
anybody.
It says over here we have serviced 100 students in total as of right now, with the students I am seeing as of right now. And like Julie said, you know, when the Children's Licensure came in, the Children's Institute licensor, she's also the director of the program for
Oh
Children's
yeah,
Institute.
forgot about that.
When she came to our sister program, she was, you know, very adamant of how proud she was of how we were able to collect so much data, and really, you know, it showed a lot of improvements in the children. Yes. All right. I would just like to share a quick success story, one of the many that I have seen while working for the past 3 years in this program. So this is the, now this is of a student, an assessment of the student at John Kennedy. And you can see here, he was very low in these 3 categories: in task orientation, behavior control, and peer social skills. His assertiveness was pretty good, and I saw that in the classroom. He was very assertive, which is, it's always good to see, but also it was good that we got to bump it up more. So his teacher recommended him for the program and told me he was having a very tough time playing with others and exercising self-control and being productive in the classroom. He had a very low result in the 3 areas that I mentioned. And when I started with him, I noticed how excited he was to come and play. He was a 2nd grader at John Kennedy, and of course all the kids are excited to hear, you know, that they can go and play for 30 minutes in a room. But obviously he came and he didn't know how long he had, so he would rush to try to get everything out, all the toys that were there. And he never really took time to really settle in and actually play with a toy. He maybe got a lot of things out, and as soon as he started playing with everything, time was done. So through that, he quickly learned to manage his time well. He learned to slow down and take his time with what he had out. He was no longer rushing, and he became very relaxed. I would say about session 4 and on, he was no longer rushing, and he became very relaxed. He was always asking if I wanted to play after the 4th session and on, and giving me the coolest toy to play with. I was very pleased to hear what his teacher was telling me about his new and improved attitude towards school and the relationships he was building with classmates. So like I said, this is the post-assessment, and you can see he was pushed all the way into the standard zone and very high, almost to this excellent zone here. And it was just really good to see after, just to see how much it changed him. And not just, in the end, these are just numbers, right? This is just, you know, that's what that is. But when you can hear that he is actually changing in the classroom and you're seeing it, that's what really made me feel like, you know, really happy that, you know, this program really works. And it was very good to see. Okay, I'll do the next. So in conclusion, play is a part of a child's life, a way to test the world. And Primary Project really focuses on the value of play and its place in the healthy development and well-being of children. As educators, parents, caregivers, and adults, we hold the responsibility to promote and provide ample play opportunities for children. One way we can fulfill that need and afford that opportunity is to offer Primary Project to the students of the Batavia City School District. And that is the end of our
Our program makes future leaders and strong learners, and it's just one other way that BCSD meets the needs of all children. Thank you very much.
I do have some questions.
Okay.
When does the screening happen?
So the screening happens, we usually try for October would be the great date. That way it gives teachers a chance to actually get to know the kids. So September gives them the chance to know the kids. In October, I would start observation of the students, so then they get to know me as well. Especially with like the second graders when they transition to John Kennedy, it's good to see a face and get to know that person. And yes, really October is when everything starts with the screening.
And then the second, okay, we should say this, and then the second
Second
round
phase of
of, see, you can switch it, we switch it, so
Yes.
like, you do it twice a year and you do it every other year, so the second round started in March with the children, the second round of children.
This program, this program is a 15 weeks session program. So we meet with children for 30 minutes once a week
Half
for
hour,
15 weeks. So
And you only have room enough for 100
no, we did 100 altogether. Yes.
for the 2 sessions through the year?
That was for the 3 years.
Oh, for 3.
Yes, we do service 100 students for 3 years.
the kids one-on-one.
Yes.
Yes.
So I am part-time from the past 2 years. So with my schedule availability, we were told by Children's Institute for our best practice guidelines to only gather around 12 to 15 kiddos to meet one-on-one.
And who does the second assessment?
So the teachers would do the pre and post assessment,
Okay.
and then at the post assessment is where
I also
Karina
complete like a
will do-
professional
yeah.
summary report, so I
And
put
I-
my input on it too.
Yes, and I will also do another assessment of what I see in the playroom.
Can a student be in this program more than one 15-week session?
Yes.
Okay, best practice is really not that they would be.
Yes.
The research that the Children's Institute has done nationally states that the program is best for each child for one round. And then that's why David meets weekly with Karina and with Mr. Knapp, because what you would do, say if you did have a child who didn't make growth, wasn't making growth, well, maybe we picked a child that wasn't appropriate for the program to begin with. And then we have to think, and at the end of when you get all the data back, there's an analysis of that too. And then you have to think, what other way can we serve this child? Would that child be better served by seeing Karina or Eric at the school? Maybe a social skills group, maybe some outside work, maybe some meetings with the parents. That's where we have to look at everything, so that if there was a child that the data didn't improve, okay, what else do we do then? How else can we, work with the child and the family, right?
So are you assuming that now that we're pretty much through a regular school year, that next year you're not going to see as many pandemic issues?
Well, the research that I'm reading now is saying that we're going to see pandemic, how do we just say that? Effects for quite a while. So I think there's been a lot of kids that have been home.
Yeah.
We're going to welcome back all our virtual learners, our homeschoolers, some of our children who maybe maybe haven't had the opportunity to work with other children. So there's going to be a lot of work to do with sharing and
It's gonna be our new normal.
yeah. I don't like saying new normal, but yeah, I think we're.
Adjusting.
Does anybody else have any questions?
No, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of our team.
Nick, can you bring energy up?
Next item on the agenda now is reports. The first one is via Google Meet. Energia and Johnson Controls Energy Performance Contract Update, Mr. Justin Benoit.
We're upset.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Are you here, Justin?
I am sorry, it's a bit hard to hear you guys through the audio.
You can go ahead with your presentation, your report. Oops.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a little bit delayed, but we can work through it if you don't mind. And so I'm going to share my screen here. I'm not sure if you guys are able to see this here. Hopefully this is okay for everyone. Thank you again for your patience. My name is Justin Benoit. I'm a project engineer with Energia. I'm here tonight to discuss the energy performance contract opportunity for the school district. We've been engaged in this initiative with the district for some time, and now we wanted to come and share the updated results with you and outline the next steps. Sorry about that. I do just want to note if there are any questions, again, I'm having kind of difficulties hearing the group, but you know, if you can try to get my attention, I would be happy to address anything further. So the first thing I wanted to note is that, you know, Energia, again, might be a familiar face. I have come to present to the board a couple of times before, but just as a refresher, Energia is working with the district on this, again, energy performance contract initiative, serving in the role of your energy savings engineer, as well as the owner's representative for this initiative. So essentially what that means is that Energia, we like to think of ourselves as an extension of the district staff with the expertise necessary to manage an energy performance contract and ensure its success. So again, I mentioned we've been working with the district for some time now, really on the development of this energy performance contract project. Making sure that, you know, all along the way in the process, we've been performing the necessary due diligence to ensure that the project is ultimately going to be successful and in line with the district's goals for this initiative. So just to give a quick refresher on what an energy performance contract is, really the first thing that I'd like to note on this slide is that this is a concept that is authorized by New York State Energy Law Article 9. So this is not something that was invented by Energia. It's a concept that's been around for some time, and since each state has adopted its own legislation. Essentially, this is a contract between a school district, an energy services contractor, which in this case is Johnson Controls, and an energy engineer or an owner's representative, again, which is Energia in this case. And I have a slide on the next page that I think will kind of give a better overview of what an energy performance contract is, as opposed to, you know, kind of explaining it verbally. But essentially, this is a budget neutral approach and an alternative funding mechanism to allow districts to achieve necessary facility improvements without having to subject taxpayers and the community to the burden of having to fund those projects, you know, as is the case for a traditional capital project. So this is, again, really an alternative funding source to allow you to get needed facility improvements performed, really with the difference being that these upgrades that you're looking to implement really have a backing of energy savings, which help to fund those upgrades that you receive. And so again, hopefully this next slide here kind of summarizes that. Here you can kind of see a chart. I'm going to walk through it, kind of each of the sections separately, give a little bit of an example, so hopefully everybody can follow along. If you'll note in the left-hand column here, current energy budget, this would be what the district is currently spending today for your utilities. So gas, electric, oil, propane, etc. All of the utilities, commodities that the district needs to run, operate, and manage your facility safely. Now, without undertaking an energy performance contract, this value would essentially remain the same, into the foreseeable future. Now, obviously, there are some cost escalations and things like that that come into play as well, but kind of setting those aside for now. If we can, for a moment, say that the district's current energy budget is $100 annually, so those are the costs that you pay, the utility companies and the third-party suppliers for your gas, electric, etc. Through an energy performance contract, we're able to come in and target energy saving improvements to help drive energy savings and bring this new energy budget or your current energy budget to a lower value, which is represented here by your new energy budget. So again, for the sake of using round numbers, assuming that we're able to achieve a 50% reduction in your utility budget, your new energy budget moving forward would be $50 a year. Now, through this project, you are able to take that $50 a year in savings that you're able to generate and put that towards your debt service payments here for the upgrades that have been implemented. Now, you'll also know on top of that, there's also a level of positive cash flow here as well. And the reason for that is, again, the annual energy savings that are generated have to entirely pay for the debt service payment for those upgrades. So on an annual basis, the energy savings that we're able to generate completely cover the cost of that debt service payment. Now, when you factor in state aid, which is another aspect of these projects, again, traditionally, capital projects, they'll be receiving some level of state aid, and the same is here, or the same is true here as well. So with that state aid that comes into play as well, after the energy savings have completely covered the debt service payment, that state aid really comes back to the district, largely in the form of excess positive cash flow. And that's also true for any excess savings than what we originally estimated and guaranteed. So all that money, again, anything on top of the debt service payment, whether that be a combination of state aid, rebates, additional savings, all of that comes back to the district in the form of excess positive cash flow. And then lastly, this slide here, this column here, after the program, so this is after the debt service payments have been completely covered, completely paid off. The new energy budget that the district was able to achieve by implementing those upgrades will remain. Again, there are some level of energy cost escalation and things that are included here, but those upgrades don't go away, and so the district will continue to get that benefit of having a reduced energy budget, and the difference between what your original energy budget was and what your new energy budget is all positive cash flow now that comes back to the district. Again, those savings will continue to generate, and all of that benefit, again, will go directly back to the district. Next here, I wanted to discuss kind of a little bit of the history between Energy working with the district and how we got to this point today. So back in the spring of last year, Energy issued a request for proposals or an RFP document on behalf of the district. We received a proposal in response from the Energy Services Company again. We conducted an in-depth technical and financial evaluation of this proposal, and then also held interviews with district administrators. As a result of that process, Johnson Controls, or JCI, as I noted here, were recommended to proceed with what's known as the Comprehensive Energy Audit. So this Comprehensive Energy Audit is really an opportunity for Johnson Controls to take a deeper dive into the buildings. They were able to investigate other opportunities to drive more savings on behalf of the district. They also spoke with, Energia, district administrators, the facility department, in order to refine the scope and see if there were any additional items that we can look to include here, again, to assist with the district's goals moving forward. And so in the fall, winter of this past year and towards the beginning of this year, Energia, as well as the district's legal counsel, received and reviewed Johnson Controls' Comprehensive Energy Audit Report, which is a little bit more technical. Again, it's a lot of the projects that Johnson looked into, as well as the cost and savings for every single item included in the project, and then the contract as well, which the contract is, of course, more of a legal document, the binding agreement with guaranteed energy savings and everything that's within the project included in that document. So that kind of brings us to tonight. where again, I wanted to attend, and I thank you again for having me, to share some activity to date, again, a background on Energia, but I also want to, which I'll jump into in a moment, share with you the updated detailed scope, cost, and savings of the EPC to give you an idea of what the project looks like. And then we'll also be seeking approval of an EPC resolution, which would essentially authorize the superintendent or board president to execute the EPC agreement. And I'm going to pause here for a moment and stop sharing. My apologies again, I really can't hear with the audio, but I was tuned into the YouTube live stream, so I might be able to jump there for a second. Okay, I can't hear everybody, sorry, it's a little bit delayed, but doesn't look like there's any questions. So I'm gonna keep moving forward. Again, please feel free to stop me, or anybody in the Google Meet, you can raise your hand or write in the chat. Okay, as I mentioned, moving forward, now I want to get into a little bit more of the project-specific details. Again, if there are any questions at this point, I think it would be best to wait until the end, but please make sure you hold on to them. I wouldn't want to lose anybody along the way. So here we have kind of a project overview. So this is an overall glimpse into what the project looks like. And so the first thing, I guess we can kind of start from the left-hand side here. If you'll note, included in this project is 11 energy conservation measures, as they're referred, or BCMs. These are essentially projects, so we'll get into some of the specifics of what these energy conservation measures are, but as they kind of describe, these are the upgrades that will be implemented as part of this project. Below that here, you have the total project cost at just about $2.4 million, and then that is definitely, closely tied to this value here as well, the district annual savings at $123,000. So again, if you recall from the chart, this project cost here is entirely self-funded by the annual energy savings that will be generated. And so again, the annual energy savings, the more that we're able to drive, the more of a direct impact and the more of a project cost that we can fund. And so again, $2.4 million for the project cost today, and about $124,000 for the annual savings. Jumping up to this box here, SD payback, this is again something that's required by the New York State Energy Law Article 9, that these projects must have an 18-year or less simple payback. Again, essentially saying that if you take this project cost and divide it by the annual savings, the payback should be 18 years or less, no more than 18 years. But in addition, over that project term, again, as I mentioned, with that green bar from the chart earlier, you can see here that this project is generating an additional $2 million in net positive cash flow for the district. Again, so this is on top of the project cost. This is after the cost of financing has been paid off. The excess positive cash flow comes back to the district. Neither JCI nor Energy has any claim to any of those excess monies. All of it goes directly back to the district for you to use as you see fit. And then the last box we have here are rebates at about $140,000. These as well are a direct benefit
to the district. Johnson Controls is obligated to not only make sure that they go out and secure these rebates on your behalf, but also if either of these utility programs were to change, Johnson Controls is still required to make the district whole if these rebates are reduced from what they're shown here. So again, if the rebates come in at $100,000 instead of $137,000, Johnson Controls will be writing the district a check for that $37,000. And again, the same is true for the annual energy savings, which are also guaranteed. Kind of same deal here. Any shortfall, Johnson Controls is required to make the district whole for that difference. Okay, next here, again, I wanted to touch on some of the energy conservation measures in a bit more detail, but I'd also like to be cognizant of everybody's time, so I'm going to move along here. Firstly, we have a lighting upgrade. And this is for both interior and exterior fixtures. You could see here this upgrade is primarily at the high school and Robert Morris, but there are fixtures in other buildings as well that are not LED today that will be upgraded to LED as part of this project. And then as you can see from the box here at the bottom, this is a large driver of the annual energy savings. Just about 1/3 of the total energy savings from the project are coming from this measure here. And then as well, there's also a level of operations and maintenance savings. This is really just an additional benefit to the district, coming from the fact that because these new LED fixtures are going to be included comprehensively, there won't be as much of a need for the district and your staff to be replacing fixtures on a regular basis. And so you're able to claim some of those savings from the lighting materials that you would ordinarily have to buy. The next item we have here is a boiler replacement at John Kennedy Intermediate School. So if you look on the left-hand side here, there's about 5 boilers here that are coming up on the end of their useful life. And so again, through JCI's investigations, through our discussions with the district, we targeted these boilers here for replacement. You can see this is the proposed new system. There's also boiler pumps here that are included as part of this. So these pumps above the boilers that will also be replaced. You can see here the annual energy savings are not very high, but again, this is a priority measure that, again, the district knows that these boilers will need to be replaced coming up in the near future. And so we were able to include them in this project here and fund them entirely from the energy savings of the congregate project. Here we have the balance of measures. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here. You can see each of the measures. You can see their annual savings that are generated. And then this chart here on the bottom is what we call an ECM matrix, an energy conservation matrix. And this essentially shows for each measure, which is across this x-axis here, you're able to see which schools include that measure. And so an X mark does indicate that that measure is included at that location. But things like pipe and valve insulation, boiler controllers help to drive savings and improve the overall heating system and heating efficiency of the buildings. Computer power management help control some PC devices throughout the district. Water conservation helps to drive some water savings as well as thermal savings for having to heat that water. Building envelope weatherization is another large driver of savings. This one helps to tighten up the infrastructure of the building, reduce exfiltration or infiltration, which would be conditioned air either leaving the space or unconditioned air entering the space. Booster heater replacement, again, another opportunity that we found to drive some savings and help improve the efficiency of that equipment. Walk-in cooler freezer controls, as well as the domestic hot water, that's the DHW pump controls. Those two measures both, again, work to help increase the efficiency of those two systems, help them work more in line with the demand of the buildings. And then lastly, we have controls optimization, again, another driver of savings. This will really help with Jason and the facilities team to better control the buildings, to better manage set points and scheduling and all of those things. It'll really help make their lives in maintenance and everything like that a lot easier with having this optimized control system. This chart here is kind of a look at the overall financials, kind of a compressed version. The first thing that I would just like to highlight before we jump into the numbers below, you can see here that these values are at a 2.75% interest rate. I would note that recently in the EPC market, we have been seeing rates that are, even below 2%. They're slowly starting to creep back up a little bit, but we would certainly expect that the district would be able to secure this rate or, hopefully even an even better rate, which would only improve these economics and help generate a little bit more net positive cash flow, which we'll touch on in a moment. And then again, I mentioned similar to a traditional capital project, this project would also be receiving state aid, just about 91 cents on the dollar. The district will be reimbursed from, again, the state ed department. So looking at this chart here, you could see we have the tax exempt lease program, payment. So this would be your annual financing payment. This is for year one, and here's the total. Next, we have the annual energy savings. Again, these are guaranteed by Johnson Controls. This is in year one, followed by the total. Moving down, same thing, annual O&M savings. O&M is again operations and maintenance. So year one and then the total value, as well as your state aid, again at that 91.4% for year one and the total. The rebates, I would note, you could see in year one, it's the same as the total. That's typically because rebates would be a one-time incentive received in year one. But with all that shown, you could see that the aggregate, the net cash flow to the district in year one is that $216,000 value. And then the total is that just over $2 million value that I shared earlier. And again, we have the full, year 1 through 18 project cash flow. But for the sake of the presentation, I wanted to kind of give a reduced version here. The last thing I would note is that M&V services are at no additional cost to the district. Measurement verification is what M&V stands for, and that's essentially, as I was saying, having that guaranteed energy savings aspect. That's really the time in the project where Johnson Controls and Energia will work to verify that those savings were generated. Again, if there are any shortfalls, Johnson Controls is required to cut the district a check to make you whole for that difference. I believe this is the last slide here, just a project timeline to give everyone an idea of where we stand and how we would be looking if the district does decide to move forward with this opportunity tonight. So again, we have executing the energy performance contract in April, obtaining all required permits and government approval. This is another role that Energia serves. We would be the district's engineer of record, and we would be responsible for developing all of the plans and specifications to submit to the State Ed Department for approval. Following State Ed approval, Johnson Controls team would begin mobilization and procurement of the major equipment, essentially the boilers, and we would look to commence and complete the construction in about August of next year. So a lot of the measures that I discussed, the lighting, temperature controls, a lot of those things can be done second shift, where contractors can come into the building, work in a specific area, clean up, and then the next day nobody knows that they were there, except the lights are brighter now. So a lot of that work would be done throughout the school year, but something like the boilers, where it's very intensive and involving the heating system, that would be a measure that would be done during the summer window. And then again, we would look to complete construction, proceed with substantial completion and all of the forms necessary for you to begin getting aid and all of that in around the August timeframe. Okay, and that's everything. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I'm gonna stop sharing and come back. Hopefully I can converse with everybody if there's any questions or anything. But thank you again.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Jen?
All right, on page 7, you have the district annual savings is $123,390. Is that while we're making our debt service payments, or is that after we pay them off in the 17.9 years?
That is essentially while the district is making your debt service payments, but both would be the short answer, again, because the upgrades don't leave the buildings.
They remain in place, and so you'll still have that benefit of the increased efficiency equipment, the increased efficiency lighting.
Service payments, and what approximately is your actual annual savings?
So your annual savings, that $123,000 value that I showed is for year one specifically. But as part of the project and as part of this cash flow projection, we have a 2% energy escalation value. So every year, that annual energy savings value would increase by 2%. But again, it really is just for the modeling purposes to ensure, again, that the annual energy savings that we generate will entirely fund that debt service payment.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time too, thank you. We'll quickly go on to the next report, the preliminary budget update and financial summary report. Scott Rosansky.
All right,
We are going to go the monthly report first, because save the best for last.
Did you say you were gonna have?
I am.
You're on the block.
All right, we're looking February 22 compared to February of 21. This is on page 123 of your board packet. Overall revenues are up 1.5 million, or just over 5%. I've highlighted four main areas. Most of them we've spoken about in previous months, so the trends are still continuing. The real property tax items, these are our taxes in lieu of tax penalties and pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, where businesses come in, get a tax break, usually off the tax rolls for 10 years, and we bill them directly. First 2 years is usually 0%, then 20% for the next two until they get to 100%. Once they get to 100%, they go on the tax rolls, so that increases the overall assessed value and drops the tax rate a little bit. So as of February, compared to February last year, we're up $129,000 in this. And this was planned. However, what wasn't planned was a year ago when we had the budget approved, is the impact on the reassessment at that time, and it dropped the tax rate significantly, about a little over $2 on the tax rate per thousand. But that doesn't apply. There was no adjustment for assessed values in the pilots, because that's commercial property, and this was residential property. So did a calculation a few months ago, and we had projected a little higher tax rate. So we're not going to meet our budget in here by about $100,000 for this year. So we do have some other offsets in the general fund revenue section, but it's just one. When you're projecting and you don't have everything finalized, that's just one of the risks involved. Overall, we're doing, again, 17% greater than last year. And then the next item is the non-property tax items, and this is the utility tax that dates back to the 1960s, when the public voted to have it in lieu of a sales tax. And we're up $57,000 here, or 14%. And as you may know, energy costs have increased. Personally, if you're looking at your utility bills, we get a portion, a tax on the utility bill. So it's based on consumption, the overall bill basically. So if your bill's going up, we're getting more sales tax, we'll call it, but it's a utility tax on that. Sale of property, up $89,000. We sold a couple tractors this past fall, and bought a new one tractor to replace that. But this is the revenue basically for selling 2 of those tractors. And then state and federal aid, up $1.2 million, or 15%. And as of February last year, a lot of the stimulus funds hadn't yet started being received by the district. I think in December of 20, that's when one of the stimulus packages passed, and then in March of 21, that was the third one that passed. So a lot of that funding started coming after February timeframe. So on our expenses, expenses were up $385,000, or 1.52%, and this is in a couple different areas. Overall, payroll is a decrease of $1,269,000. This is a couple reasons for this is one, we did an accounting entry earlier this year than what we normally have done in the past. That was $618,000, where in the past we did it at June 30th. We did it earlier this year, October timeframe. So that transaction occurred a little bit earlier, and with the goal next year, even earlier in the month of July. So then moving forward, the accrual from the prior year is current type thing. But part of the 1.2 million is, well, in addition to that decrease, we do have about $1.2 million that's being charged to federal funds for stimulus funds. So those are the ESSER 2 funds, and that's overall it's like $2.2 million, but most in payroll, or as of February, $1.2 million in charge. So if you adjust for those, payroll would be up 549,000, or just over 4% for comparisons purposes. BOCES is an increase of $944,000, or 31%. And this is in a couple of areas. One in technology. With supply chain issues, we did a lot of our purchasing a lot earlier. And so usually we did a lot of our purchasing and pass it in later in the school year. And it's taken us a lot longer time to receive the items and then therefore pay for the items. So their bills are starting to come in, and we're paying those now a little bit earlier. And then there was additional stimulus funds, emergency, ECF is what it's called, that we purchased and are hopefully going to get reimbursed through a stimulus fund through our BOCES purchases too. So that may be offset there. And then the other area in BOCES, we have some remote learning for our secondary students that is being charged through BOCES. They're running that program that we didn't have last year. In the area of central services, really 2 years ago, at the June 30th of 20, we did a lot of year-end purchasing to get ready for 2021 school year and the COVID, so we had a lot of purchases early in 2021 that ballooned the PPE, and those expenses didn't really occur after 2021 school year, so a lot of those expenses are down in the central services item. So that's $230,000, plus the addition, part of that is also the payroll accrual that was reversed out. And instructional media, most of that is the technology that we purchased through BOCES that I mentioned, how BOCES costs are up. And transportation's up $247,000, or 44%. If you recall, last year we had some 100% remote days, primarily in the month of December. So we have more days this year than last year. Same number of buses for STA, and our Attica bus, we've seen an increase in some of our needs with the Attica bus stuff. Our foster care students, McKinney-Vento students, out-of-district placements. That summarizes February to February. Happy to answer any questions on that before we jump into the budget. Your summary in your board packet begins on page 190. It looks a little different than what I'm presenting here, but I'm going to cover all the same items. The expenditures, and when we met in March, we had March 17th, which was 2 days after our budget workshop. We had identified the first 3 areas of savings, some retirements, reduction of buses to our current level this year, and then also taking additional grant funds and apply it to the general fund budget. This ARPA grant is the 3rd stimulus funding that was approved last March. So the goal with the ARPA funds is after they're exhausted, the employees that were hired or services were hired are either incorporated into the budget or they're no longer in existence. So we are phasing in to make sure that if the board decides to continue the program 2 years from now, that it's not a big impact financially at that point in time. Since then, and what you see tonight is we have been able to delay or remove some expenditures of $48,926 from the budget. And then we had to add $521,000 approximately to the budget for some contractual negotiations, obligations that we have. It's part of the contract settlement. The funding for that, we'll get to later. It's going to be offset, so it's not financial impact on next year's budget. But our initial budget was $55 million, or 5.74% increase. Those adjustments on the previous page show on March 17th was a minus $756,000. The 2 adjustments presented tonight, the equipment savings and then adding back some expense, showed an increase of $472,000 approximately. So tonight's recommended budget gets us to $54,802,593, or up 5.19% compared to last year. On the revenue side, we did get additional state aid, about $71,000 in New York State budget. And the fund balance, when we were negotiating the contract this year, we had looked at our fund balance, and that's where that is coming from, and that was accounted for at that time during those contract negotiations period. It wasn't included in the first part of the budget, but just the way everything, the contract wording, when we started looking at it further, this is the correct way to handle it financially, accounting-wise. So we had to increase the budget, but then appropriate the surplus. The $71,000 additional revenue from New York State becomes, there's 2 main categories. There was a reduction in foundation aid. New York State has made the commitment to make school districts whole, and they're phasing that in over the next 2 school years. The initial governor's numbers were a little high. They were adjusted for changes in student population, basically, because that's what foundation aid is based on. If we're bringing it from actual up to actual, there was a change in student population. This foundation aid formula started back like 15 years ago, 2007-8 time frame. See an increase in the BCSD aid of $360,000, and then there were 8 smaller categories that had smaller increases, so they total $32,649. So the sum of those 3 numbers are the additional $71,000. So the impact on the tax levy, when we first presented the initial preliminary budget, it was up 5.5%, or $20,566,000. The net expenditure reduction is minus $285,000. The additional revenue in fund balance is 592, so that reduces the tax levy by 877,000, brings us to 19,688,898, or 1% above this year's tax levy. Tax cap is 1.62%, so we're under the cap. We're 5.62%, or about $120,000. So what's the impact on the taxpayer? So assuming there are no changes in assessed value and the formulas, just using last year's numbers with a 1% increase. Last year, a taxpayer at $90,000 would have paid $1,731. Next year, $1,748, or a difference of $17.31 on an annual basis, or $1.44 a month. And again, this is assuming no changes in assessed value. The district does not control assessed values. We control the tax levy. Tax levy is a 1% increase, so we're just projecting with a 1% increase. Wanted to show a 10-year history of what the tax levies have been over the years, and there's 5 years where they've been 0, and 1 year where it's been a slight decrease, and then other years around a 2% or so increase. And this is the 10-year projected tax rate, and again, last year there was a big assessed value adjustment in the community, and we went from 2133 down to 1923 per thousand. So if I take that 1923 and add the 1%, it's projected to be at 19.42. I know assessed values are being looked at again this year, but for projection purposes, since our levy's going up 1%, I'm showing the tax rate going up 1%. Some general comments on the budget. We have $100,000 in the capital outlay project for masonry restoration at Batavia High School. It is state aidable. We'll get the state aid, building aid the following year. I think this is our 6th or 7th year of including the capital outlay in the general fund budget. Our 3-year tax levy average increase is 0.32%. Our 10-year average tax increase is 0.883%. This I presented last year. This next bullet at the public hearing for the budget showed kind of where the district stood in the community on the 4 taxing jurisdictions. In 2003-04, the district was taxpayers paid 56% of their taxes to Batavia City School District. Last year, 2021, we were down to 50%. So the tax burden from the district decreased 6% among the residents in those years. I don't have the city's tax rate for this year, so I couldn't do it at this point in time because those come out shortly here. So I just wanted there's a progression that the city school district taxes on the tax burden on the community has not been increased by the school district. Over the last 18 years, the CPI has averaged, CPI's Consumer Price Index, that's averaged 2.18. And our tax levy is 0.9 under that at 1.28%. So the district is doing a little bit better than just increasing. If taxes were to increase by the CPI, the tax levy would be a lot higher than it is now. And since the tax cap, we've done well compared to CPI even before the tax cap. We're in our 11th year of the tax cap. The average annual tax levy in these 11 years is $173,000. The average annual tax levy savings is about $391,000 over these 11 years. The average tax cap calculation over these 11 years is just over 3%, 3.06, and the district's tax levy in these 11 years is 0.93. If you were to cumulatively add up all the savings by staying under the tax cap over these 11 years, we've saved the taxpayers $29,887,000. So in summary, the expenditures are $54,802,593, an increase of $2.7 million or 5.19%, and the tax levies at $19,688,898, an increase of $194,000, almost $195,000 at 1% increase. That's the budget as being presented and recommended for adoption tonight. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks.
And for getting us to a place that we requested after seeing the initial 5.5% increase. Done a lot of work changing it to our 1% tax levy increase. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the student she's not here. Oh,
No,
you're
but
giving it?
I'll give it for her.
All right.
So Kylie Tatarka's not here tonight, but she did give me her report. The Batavia Independent A Winter Guard had a great performance over the April 8th to 10th weekend. They made it into semifinals at the World Guard International Competition in Dayton, Ohio. On April 2nd, student government hosted their first spring fling in a few years. It went well and many students outwardly expressed how they enjoyed having a dance back in their school lives. The prom committee at the high school is currently making plans for this year's senior prom. The current plan is for the event to be held outside at the Vendetta Stadium, and more information will be coming soon. Student government is also planning for the end of year Spring Fest that is annually held at the high school. They hope to hold it mainly outside if the weather permits, and the date is still to be determined. That's
Thank
it.
you.
You're welcome.
Next is the superintendent's report, Mr. Jason Smith.
So I'm actually going to give a little presentation. If you can bear with me, appreciate your patience. I want to update you on my entry plan, or finalize with you the status of the entry plan. So as you may recall, when I was going through the interview process here back in the fall, I pledged to the board and to myself that I would engage in an entry plan to learn more about the district. I did not want to take for granted that I'm from the district and I live here, there's more I can learn. So I engaged in about a 3 or 4 month long process, speaking with all our stakeholders, including our school board members, all the way down through our students. I met with faculty and staff, with representatives, and I'll walk you through who I met with. That began early January and ended just last month. So I had 4 goals. One, I wanted to learn the history and culture of our school, which I did. I wanted to learn the hopes and dreams and aspirations. Got a lot of nice answers with that one. Goal number 3, where can we improve? What are some opportunities that we can get better at? And goal number 4, learn about the operations management, what I call it the job part of the job. Right, so we have the goals and visions, and then the actual operations management structure of our school. So those were my 4 goals, and I met those goals. So I engaged in about 3 or 4 steps. Thanks to my wonderful assistant here, we scheduled hundreds of meetings, it felt like, right, Brittany? Several meetings. I met with all the stakeholder groups and constituent groups, including all of our school board members. I had maintained regular classroom visits. Those will happen, of course, post-entry plan, but those were an important part of the process from the start. I spent time looking at past Board of Education documents, contracts. As I entered the district in January, we're still on the cusp of COVID-19, so I spent time looking at those processes as well. And of course, always looking at student achievement data with Molly Corey and our principals. So those are the steps that I had engaged in. I just want to show, I think it's important that we engage in my process, that I engage with all types of media. We're very active on social media, we're active in print media. I also want to point out that I have been a regular guest on WBTA, which I know appeals to another segment of our city population. So I spent some time with Lucine Kaufman, and then I appear on the radio show once a month on Main and Center. So I try to broadcast as many opportunities as possible. Of course, we have, as I said before, we have Facebook, which is one avenue, our website, print media, we still issue the newsletter in the Penny Saver. So I am trying to reach all facets. This will happen again post-entry plan as well. So who did I meet with? I met with our Board of Education members, all of you, one-on-one. I met with our current administrators. I met with all the Employee Association leadership. So we have the Teachers Association, the Clerical Association, our Custodial Association, our Administrators Association, and our Food Service. I met with all of their officers. I met with the grades and department chairs at all the schools. I went to John Kennedy, Jackson, the middle school and the high school. I did not meet with every single teacher, of course, because we're too large to have that happen, but I did meet with every representative from those areas. I have met and will continue to meet with our students. There's one there meeting with Mr. Corzelis and some middle school students. That will be an ongoing process, as I've always done as superintendent, a post-entry plan, meet and talk with our students. I met with our parent groups early on. In January and February, we have 4 parent groups. I met with all of them. At that time, I think we did that online. Jennifer was involved in at least 2 of those. And I met and have met with city personnel as well. So approximately 40 interviews with adults, at least 8 lunch meetings with several students. This is as of last month, but there was going to be more beyond that. About 125 people. That's about 1/4 of the entire district in terms of staff. And of course, I attended and will continue to attend athletic and district events. Those are really where some of the best conversations happen with students, with parents. I had a great conversation in the music induction ceremony this afternoon. So that will continue post-entry plan, but being newer to the district, at least in this role, that was important. So what did I ask? These are the same questions I shared with the board back in the fall. What makes you proud of our school? You got lots of answers there. Again, what are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? Where can we get better? Where can we improve? My favorite question, in one word, describe our school. What do you need from me? What advice can you share? And any other questions? Those are the same 6 questions I asked, even to our students. So I have pages and pages of notes, and I did my best to compile the answers into some themes. So what makes you proud? You can see the answers there. One of the words I heard over and over again, a strong sense of pride, a strong sense of community pride. I heard this from all the way through, from our school board members all the way down through our students. I heard a lot about the number of opportunities our students have. The students explained that to me, everything from the fishing team, right, to the alpine skiing, everything in between. There was a strong sense of teamwork. This was especially evident as we came out of COVID-19, the staff and faculty coming together as a team. The theme of diversity came up loud and clear, a small city atmosphere. I talked before about the concept of resilience coming out of COVID-19. That was something that was special. The parent groups especially expressed strong appreciation for the district as a whole and a strong sense of pride. Our students spoke to me about the opportunities that they have. I met with all types of students, and the staff also mentioned to me the improved graduation rates that have gone on here the past 3 or 4 years. Hopes and dreams, good to great. Let's move our district from a good district to a great district. That came through. more community involvement. There's also the concept of wanting families to choose to come to our school. You know, even though we don't consider our students our customers, you know, we want our families to choose to come to our school. They have other choices, of course, in the area, but we want them to choose to come to our school. Strong concern to have relevant and engaging lessons and curriculum for our students. And then this piece really came up loud and clear, long-term goals. You know, what are we going to have towards down the road? What is our focus? How can we involve strategic planning in that process? I'll talk more about that at the end. Improvement opportunities, this kind of linked into the one I just asked. Obviously, we're here to teach students and have our students learn and grow, so academic growth for all of our students. I heard from several staff members and students as well, importance of reading. We heard about the pandemic loss, right, that happened the past couple of years. We need to deal with that. Attendance rates, an ongoing factor. I was talking today with Molly Corey and Paul Kessler about our attendance initiatives. There is a concern to have more communication from the district, student behavior and how students have responded to the current issues with COVID-19. More family engagement, of course, fiscal oversight, the importance of being wise in how we spend our dollars, but also giving our students opportunities. A practical concern with space concerns. We're in the process of addressing that now as we speak. It's been a while since we have updated our process as to how we evaluate teachers. That came through. We've engaged in it. We've begun a process with our Teachers Association to look at that process again. I talked before about having relevant and aligned curriculum and again strategic planning. That came up as well. There were many more, but those were the general themes that I had gathered. So my favorite question, this is the one that people either answer right away or they took their time on. So you can see, I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see there's some general themes there. Obviously the home-raised one is important to me, being a home-raised person myself. But these were the words that we saw, these were the words that came up over and over again. So I'll just give you a minute to ponder those.
Gritty?
Gritty, yeah, that was a COVID-19.
Oh.
We survived COVID-19.
Okay.
Anything on the resonate with you? Complex. Like I said, I like home raised. Promising. Awesome was a one I heard 3 or 4 times. So that's how, in one word, that's how our students, I asked the students that too. These were some of the common themes in one word. So the advice, not often I'd like to ask for advice. So I asked the students and our faculty and staff and my administrative colleagues and our board members for some advice. There's a list there. You know, stay visible. They want long-term commitment. Listen. You know, not just hear, but listen. I heard this one several times. I took it as a compliment. Keep doing what you're doing. So I guess I'll keep doing that, whatever that might be. You know, stay approachable. Be invested. Okay, share information and be trustworthy. And obviously, confidentiality is important as well. So that's what I heard from our stakeholders by and large with that. So, what have I done thus far with this information? So I've taken what I've heard, I've taken some actions in the process. Every 2 weeks an update comes out from my office. That comes out on Facebook, comes out an email, text message link. That will happen. That has happened every 2 weeks and that will continue. The board asks for weekly updates, which is important to practice. I've always had as a superintendent. As the board knows, every Friday, usually about 8 o'clock, the Friday notes are issued to you as needed. We're addressing the space issue as we speak. As you saw, we're in the process of moving UPK to Robert Morris in the fall. We're looking at long-term capital projects as well. Obviously, you've seen me at different events. That will happen as well. So that's been a response. It's something I've always done, even as an assistant principal, going to events. So it's not anything new to me. It's nothing special to me. I enjoy doing it. There was a need that I heard. I've taken action there. Weekly visits to all schools. I build on time each week to make sure I visit each school once a week. Thanks to Dr. Corey, we have reinitiated strategic planning. We've had 3 meetings so far. We have a 4th meeting coming up on Tuesday. I've been to every single one of those. the board can expect to hear a presentation in June from Molly and her team on those updates. And then from there, it's then going to trickle down to district goals, building goals, board goals. You're not off the hook. The board's going to have their own goals as well. And I think it's important, we're the largest school district, at least in our area, the media contact, to have that regular media contact. I'm not afraid of it. I try to embrace it and use it to our advantage, so I try to have regular media contact, as you saw, even on WBTA. Almost have weekly contact with somebody from the Daily News or from the Batavium. So they picked up our press release on the what am I trying to say? St. Anthony's, the change in that parking lot strategy. So I try to have contact with them as well. So those are the steps that we have taken so far, and I will continue to take as I move on. I think that's it. So any questions, comments, anything you would like to learn more about? So I will consider the entry plan process finalized, so to speak, but obviously we're going to keep doing some of the things that there already, such as the lunch meetings with the kids, attending the events and such. So.
No, I think it seems that everything went very well for you, becoming the superintendent, and you have our support as always, and appreciate the very detailed report you gave us.
The process itself is very good. I think engaging with all the staff was important. And I got some lot of good advice. One of the pieces I learned from our food staff is normally I'll have lunch like with the class officers, student council. They said, Jason, why don't you have lunch with some quote unquote kids who maybe aren't involved. So Mr. Kessler picked some students who aren't involved, who not rise to that level of being on student council. I had lunch with them just last week, and honestly, looking at those stories, Scott heard the story. Well, I always ask the students, how much does it cost you think to run our school? And they came up with all kinds of answers, everything from like $10,000 to, right? So of all the groups that I had lunch with, the group that got it the most right was the group that I just met with last week, who was not one of the typical class leader groups. The students at $50 million, he went over and met he went over and met Scott. Scott shook his hand. Scott was sure he watched all the buzzer presentations, that he got it all right. So, right?
Yes.
His name was Hassan, 9th grader. So he won the prize of meeting Mr. Rosansky.
Well, I appreciate all your hard work,
Sure.
and hopefully you'll be able to continue to do everything that you have in your plan, and appreciate especially the regular media contact and interaction.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is agenda alterations, and we have a few. They're on the green sheet here, consent items. We have two things, CSE reports, appointments, and contracts. So they're included. I need a motion to accept the agenda alterations as written.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Lenve. Is there any second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Humes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Lembe?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes, except I think, can't read fast enough. Is there a contract with a passenger I should pull myself out of people?
Yes, there will be. That will be in consent. Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes. We'll go on to consent items. I need a motion for consent items, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Lenve. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Humes. Is there any discussion?
Mrs. Bowman, I will put you as abstaining just from that action.
The consent items, it's contracts is in that too?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
They just got the city's charging us $275 to use Dwyer Stadium.
Yeah, that's practice again.
But the last game that me and you were at, they wouldn't have turned the water on. The city would not turn the water on until what did I hear? The beginning of May or middle of April. And there was actually a few people that had to leave there because there was nowhere to go to the bathroom at Dwyer Stadium. So they had to leave, go wherever they had to go home, I would assume, and then come back. And who does the work at the stadium? Does the city supply the lawn, the stadium being mowed
No,
when we're playing?
no, that's the staff. Having worked there, it's
Who,
the
who,
people.
our staff does it?
No, the Muck Dogs people do it.
Okay, who's there for the Muck Dogs right now?
What's his name?
Is that Hal?
Nichols.
Rodney Nichols.
Because when I worked there, I had to go out and I lined the field for Coach Saunders and Coach Mancuso. I had to take care of the field for them.
Okay.
John, I can follow up with the water, as well as that meeting.
Yeah. So. Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we're good. Mrs. Lembe?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes, and at this point, I'd like to stop and say, first of all, congratulations to Mr. Corzilius for being appointed the We're very excited. We hope that your time there is lengthy and successful. You have a lot on your plate in the middle school.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed my time there the past 9 months. I'm really excited. All the support I've received from the rest of the administration and just the students there and the teachers have been fantastic. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Yes. And one other thing that I want to remark about is the retirement of one of our teacher aides who's been with us for 25 years, Mrs. Deborah Caruso. So thank her for all of her service too.
Can I just stop you just 1 second?
Sure.
I also wanted to mention, we also approved Jessica Kozelius as a result of Nathan's appointment. Jessica has become now the assistant principal full-time. So
Oh.
we should also recognize Jessica.
Congratulations. Okay, next item on the agenda is old business. We have the 2022-23 budget adoption. Thank you. I need a motion to accept the budget, to adopt this budget. So, motion made by Mrs. Humes, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marucci. Is there any discussion? Seeing none.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lembe?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. The second, under old business, is property tax report card and real property tax exemption reports.
I'm gonna mention one thing on this report. On page 3 of the property tax report card, there was one slight error under employee benefit accrued liability. The one that is in the packet says it was discontinued, and as Scott pointed out, that was just an error in the wording. It is continued.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the property tax report card and real property tax exemption reports.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Marucci, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lenve, is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Lembe?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. Also, under old business, we have resolution SEQRA Type 2 action and ordinary / contingent expense for the Batavia High School roof repair with a transfer of up to $140,000 in repair reserve funds. I need a motion. So, motion made by Mrs. Humes, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bowman, is there any discussion? Seeing none?
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman? Mrs. Lundy.
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. We'll go on to new business. Energia and Johnson Controls, Inc., Energy Performance Contract Resolution. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Roll. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Humes. Is there any discussion?
When did we come up with this?
So I can give you a little bit. This came up about a year and a half ago. So it's a project that I had inherited when it came in January. I had put a pause on it. I had heard the presentation back in January, like my first week or so here. We then had put a pause on it last month or the month before. I wanted to spend more time learning about it, as to what the process was. Before Justin's presentation here tonight, I spent time with him last month. Up until this point, I did not feel like I could own this project and fully recommend it. So the direct answer to your question, Jennifer, about a year and a half ago, Scott has more of the history. I had paused it, spent time with it. I can't recommend it. With the rising cost of energy, it's probably a wise move for us to do at this point.
Okay, because I'm just like, I mean, even with the whole 123,390 district annual savings, he was kind of vague on the yes and no, we're paying that while we're paying back. But even at 2%, you're looking at like almost 36 years by the time we're getting it. I'm going to be in my 70s by the time we're going to see any, like, the full profit on it.
Well, no, if you go back to that one chart with the three bar graphs, it's a 15-year.
Under 18
Well, it says
years.
but then it goes into this, it'll take us 17.9 years to pay
Right.
that.
Yeah, so under 18 years. You're right.
So it'll take us 18 years before we start actually seeing the income portion
No. It'll take us 18 years we're
to pay it back.
Essentially, yes, and also getting state aid. So it's going to take 17 years. We're going to incur debt, right? Part of that debt is then reimbursed through state aid. It's going to take 17 years to pay that back. In the meantime, we're also gaining the savings.
Well, I mean, essentially, if you're still paying it back, you're not really gaining a savings until you paid it all back.
Well, I gotta find that chart again, but
So, John, on a regular capital project, we're paying our debt over 15 years, so really this is technically 3 years longer
Okay.
by doing it this way for apples to apples comparison with a regular capital project.
Okay.
Any more questions? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mrs. Lundy.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. Energy performance contract between Johnson Controls and Batavia City School District. I need a motion. Motion made by Mrs. Humes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marucci. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Excuse me. Yes.
Mrs. Lundy.
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. 2022-23 Genesee Valley BOCES annual meeting notice, administrative budget, and board member vote. I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Lenve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Humes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Lundy.
Yes.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. The next is resolution, the 21-22 school calendar revision.
What was revised?
The Friday before Memorial Day will not
Okay,
be district
all right, that's what I thought.
That's
That's-
based on us not using snow days, so it'll be district holiday for all staff.
Gotcha. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
We'll be happy about that. I need a motion to accept this resolution. Motion made by Mrs. Humes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Roll. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Lundy.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes. Next, And last item for old business, renew membership, New York State Association of Small City School Districts. I need a motion to to renew our membership. So motion made by Mrs. Humes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lenve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mrs. Humes,
Yes.
Mrs. Lembe,
Yes.
Mr. Roll,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Mr. Marucci,
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes.
I do wanna make one note on the consent agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Campus contacted me this morning on item J2, which was their bid.
Mm-hmm.
In this bid, there is a Parkitect's bid, which unfortunately, when they sent the documentation, it's off by $600. Parkitect's is a state bid, so it does up this contract, which is a little over $2 million, to be $600 difference. I just wanna make sure you note that.
Thank you. We will go to other reports. Policy 3130, recognition of a community achievement. Further discussion on handling dedication of room, library building, or athletic field. Anybody have a comment? One of the things that I'm concerned with has to do with that the public needs to understand our conversations that we have that we may not have had in the public. I have expressed to all of you that I am not for naming buildings or fields for community members or employees or whatever. That's just my opinion, or that's just what I think. But I know some of the rest of the board is not, has had a lot of emails sent to them about support for naming the BHS auditorium for Mr. Frank Owen, who was the first music director for the Batavia City School Districts. He worked from, I have all of this stuff with me. He worked for the school district for 40 years, up until 1962, I believe.
64.
Yes, he was, and the majority of his work was at the middle school, because the high school hadn't been built. So he was a music director for 2 years up at a brand new high school for Batavia High. The problem that I have with it is not Mr. Owen, not by any means. I mean, obviously he's has been a big part of the school district and has done some terrific things. I'm just not for naming buildings and fields. I wasn't on the board for the Van Dyke Stadium, nor was I on the board for the Mr. Anderson softball field. And, I understand.
Technically John Kennedy, which is not named after the president.
No, it's not.
The superintendent
The
from
superintendent.
1890 to
Oh, yeah,
1930.
I absolutely understand that, but, like I said, to everyone, this is just my opinion. It isn't make it, that it's gonna be dictated into law. It's what everyone on the board wants to happen, so.
I think the thing with Mr.
Sure, absolutely.
I think the thing that I look at, so it needs to be explained to me if I'm not understanding this right, but all the time he was at Ross Street,
Mhm.
he was working with high school students.
Yes.
He was
That's the
doing
high
high
school.
school
It was the high
programs.
school.
It was
It
the high
was
school.
the high
Yeah.
school.
Mhm.
So it's unfortunate that it's the middle school now. I mean, not really unfortunate, but it's not the high school anymore. And he should be honored, in my opinion,
At the high school.
at the high school where he did all that work, where he developed all those programs, where he forged all those bonds with those students, where he, Mamma Mia, when I sat and watched Mamma Mia, all I could think of was Frank Owen and the voices that were singing and the instruments that were playing. He started the whole concept of the musicals.
Mhm.
He has started much
Mhm.
that, yes, there were many that followed, they did, and I'm sure they followed well. But would they necessarily have followed in the same path had it not been for Mr. Owen?
And I said the same thing in regards to, I had Coach Anderson, whom I admire greatly as a coach, but having known his history behind women's athletics, I wouldn't have been as fortunate to play softball or to play soccer in high school, let alone in college.
and we've named a field after him. He's the same, you're looking at it's apples to apples, except it's athletics and music. He did the same thing for women's athletics that Mr. Owen did for music.
And it's very
I
unfortunate.
absolutely agree that there have been employees and citizens of Batavia that, you know, have done things for the school district. That's not my argument. My argument is, my argument is that I can't support naming buildings after employees and citizens of the community, because I think there are so many that have come along and have added to not athletics and music and art that I don't want to leave them out either.
I can acknowledge that. I really understand that to some extent. But we have made precedents, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not.
Mhm.
We have Vendetta Stadium and we have the Anderson Field. And this is music and art. And sometimes music and art gets kind of pushed around and not the attention and the focus isn't given as much as it should. And I would like to see this named after Mr. Owen.
Well, because we had so much interest in the last couple weeks sending emails, especially, I guess, Jen, you got a lot today.
Well, my mother's in the class of 65, so my
Yeah.
name and phone number went on the bottom of an email to their entire class. So it didn't take long before I was speaking to people.
Well,
But the thing is I greatly appreciate that,
Right.
because yes, his son is the one who came up with this. His son is the one who proposed this to us. But I'm guessing a lot of his coursers never even thought of the idea of, oh, can we do this?
Well-
And he's asked for it, but he's gotten the support within minutes of sending or calling his former students. I mean, we're sitting here with people who are all 75 and up, voicing their support for this man.
Well,
no,
I'm
I
not-
wasn't alive when he was here, but I've heard about him since I was born.
well, this is what I would like to propose. Because we had Mrs. Pacino come today and want to speak to us about this, and she wasn't able to because of the rules we have about speaking to public to be heard, we're going to move the vote to the next meeting. So if any of the community that spoke, even a couple called Brittany today about wanting to speak, and we said no, you couldn't come because they didn't sign up in time, they can come and speak to us, and then we'll have the vote at the next meeting. So,
Sure, and I can reach out to them.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't mean to
No, I
ignore you.
understood. I understood.
On the risk of sounding like a jerk, though, is anything really going to change anybody's opinion on what 10, 15 people have to say? Even if everybody on these emails showed up, is that going to change your feeling?
To tell you honestly, I think let's change it. Let's move it to May.
Yeah.
Let's let them come and talk,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
And then the other piece too, Jennifer, is it can be, right now it's placed under other reports, right now it's not calling for a vote.
Right.
So my recommendation, Allison, prior to this meeting, was if there is the will of the board to have it on the agenda, which it sounds like there is,
Mm-hmm.
to have it on the agenda next month, we can put it under new business,
Yeah.
or maybe old business,
Yeah.
and then there can be a vote on it.
Formal
And that will
vote.
give the public a chance to weigh in addition to the emails that we have received throughout the last couple of days.
And I just want to reiterate too, that the rules of public to be heard are, you have to sign up Friday prior to the Thursday meeting.
I don't know if this is an appropriate place to do this, but I would like to have discussion on changing that.
Oh, yes,
So
Yes.
we can also add that
yes.
next month to Brittany, to other reports, we can have a conversation about those
Yes.
timelines as well.
Yes,
So,
we'll do that too.
And then I just have one last question. How was Vendetta Stadium named? Who,
They just kind of said it. I was asking my parents about it earlier. It doesn't appear as though there were board minutes on it. It just appears as though that it was a discussion. Esther brought it to the,
Yes.
was
Esther
there a
brought it
family,
up.
so that was a family member?
It was a family member, it
correct?
was his wife,
Just-
after he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ed Anderson was Dr. Ellie Schertz, Howe, and Sue Medley, who were two former
Former
athletes.
students.
And then they had the backing of the athletic department and then the backing of the Board of Education.
I just think that's important to notice or to note that his wife was able to have that stadium named. He was huge in sports.
And I
And
absolutely
it is
agree.
there now.
But it was that board that accepted it. That's why we have a policy. That's why we have a policy.
We have precedents now though too. I
Oh.
mean, I don't,
Not setting precedent, it's already been set.
Yeah,
it
so-
has been
It
set.
just has to be
So-
whether the majority of the board wanna name the auditorium after Mr. Owen, or we do not. That's all. That's what the vote will be.
And I'm just, I guess one last, maybe last statement is that I take seriously naming a room or an auditorium or a field or a building. That is something to be taken seriously. So I think also at some point we should be establishing specific criterion for each field, for for the music and the arts, for the athletic, etc., so that somebody who is truly deserving and has truly given their heart and their soul to this school district can be honored.
Okay?
And I think, Barb, we can look at this again, Barb and everybody else, but policy 3130 does in fact address that. Whether that needs to be updated on is a different conversation, but this is how I started the conversation with all of you. Let's find out what the current board policy is that speaks to this. So we addressed this last month, so we have policy that if we do move ahead with the naming of the auditorium after, and we have policy that would support that. But once that decision is made, or if it's not made, we can then look at that policy again to see if it meets our needs.
Mhm.
And I'm not recommending changing the policy at this point, because we have to deal with this first. But I think Chet has something to say too.
Yeah. So I get that we're gonna push it to May, which I'm all for. But are we following the same process for the softball field that we're following right now for?
I have no idea,
Do anybody
because
know?
I wasn't on the board then.
I can speak in my experience of having gyms and fields named after people. This isn't the first time that I've been through this. So the direct answer to your question, Chet, is yes. The process we're following is above board. Give the public a chance to.
It's in the policy.
It's in the policy.
Mhm.
There does need to be a board vote on it. We've had a request. We've had a request to have it on the agenda, which would then necessitate the board to have a vote on it, yea or nay on it. So
As long as we're not doing nothing different,
No.
I'm all
And I
for
can't,
it.
none of us can speak to,
No.
Ed Anderson, other than what we read in the paper at the time, but, so,
Okay,
all right?
Yep.
So we'll have that to the agenda next month.
yes. Next, under other reports, we have discussed the 2022-23 board meeting schedule. This is just a discussion, it's not written in stone. We've had a request by Mr. Regal to change the meeting nights from Thursday. As you can see, he's not here. Obviously, he has a conflict. And so, does anybody have any preference as to what day? John Marucci,
Go back to Mondays.
Monday? Okay,
Monday?
Mondays. Anybody,
Yeah.
I know,
Because we
Tuesday
won't
is the
miss.
easiest for me, but I'll make it work. I'll make
Tuesday I
whatever
serve
we
on
do.
another
yes,
board.
there's
I will make
Tuesdays,
it work.
there, are some conflicts there. Monday seems to be the best day for
I think-
everyone.
I think the only reason we moved it was because Annabelle wanted it moved.
Yes.
He did, he had a conflict at home.
Mhm.
So Annabelle wanted it moved, so I
Yes.
think that's why we moved it in the first place, because
Mhm.
the first year I was on, it was Mondays,
Mhm.
Yes.
and pretty much everybody made it.
Well, you said it hasn't really conflicted with city council, that was my only
No,
concern, is that like people like
Um,
to get
the only question I
vote
have
to
about
vote, but
that
if you're
is
saying
that,
it
John
doesn't have to be as long
Regal
as there's two
does
Okay.
get here by the skin of
Because
his
she came
teeth
out
at
one day.
6 o'clock, cause he
Because that's
closes his office.
And she had.
He indicated that he was fine with the 6 p.m.
Oh,
start.
okay, I'm glad he spoke to you then, because I know that there have been moments in which he has said, I'll get there as quickly after I close up as I can, and we've started meetings without him, but if he said 6, that's fine.
So again, if we're gonna have it, the only exception I would need to make again is the first, the reorg. I have pre-arranged conflicts in.
The
first week of
reorganization
July.
meeting.
I have to keep that, don't have to, but I would like to keep it on a Thursday, and then after July, move to the Mondays.
That's fine.
And I can put a tentative schedule together, just keep in mind, many of our holidays are
Are
on
Mondays.
Mondays. So I won't be able to stick to, for example, every third Monday or every
Yes.
second, but I'll try to keep it
If we have like
consistent.
like the October
Right.
holiday, that meeting would then take place on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
There'd be exceptions here and there,
Yeah.
but, so if we can come up with a revised agenda, I would just ask that we keep the, July meeting as is, and then from there, following the third Mondays, and then we can have that as an
Yeah.
action item next
Well,
week.
is it,
Okay.
is the fourth fall on a Monday?
It's a Sunday, I think.
We have a holiday.
Well, how do
But it's- but it-
different
but it's-
places
right.
celebrate them?
But yeah, but I'm just saying, the fourth, I think, falls on Sunday, and then the
Sunday, I
fifth,
thought this year.
but the fifth is the actual,
No,
that's the
July 4th is
holiday.
a Monday this year.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
Or
is
it is
it?
a Monday,
I'm
isn't it?
sorry, I thought
And
it
then
was.
Oh, I didn't
it's
do.
15th and-
Yeah, so I mean, we wouldn't be able to do it on a Monday anyhow, because it's a
Right.
holiday.
Used to celebrate.
So I, again, not knowing, walking in, that Thursday, that Thursday meeting, or that meeting in July is actually it's two meetings. You have the reorg meeting and the regular meeting. If you just keep that day, then move into August after that.
So
Yeah,
again, the
Jason
only
and I
thing,
will work on a schedule,
Okay.
and then we'll be able to present one to you guys.
Now, the reorganization meeting will be in the morning? It just seemed
It
to.
doesn't have to be. I mean, we can
That's
have
up
two
to you.
meetings. I mean, that's up to you. Your options are to have two meetings on the same, and I say like two meetings, you would have like the reorg meeting, you'd adjourn that, then go to regular meeting. Your other option would be to have the reorg meeting, you have to have it by like July 15th. So you have it like on July 8th, like in the morning, it only takes 5 or 10 minutes, and then you can have the regular meeting, like later on in July, not that third Monday. But, I mean, we can come up with a schedule and see what you think about it.
Okay.
the only thing I ask, I think I mentioned to all you guys, I'm not gonna be in town, so can I zoom in?
You can zoom in, but yes, you can. There's steps we have to follow on that.
Okay.
We have to have I'll explain later, but
I mean, I gotta get voted in first before I.
the short answer is yes, but there's steps we have to follow.
Okay.
We have to notify the public that you're zooming in, and wherever you're zooming in from, there has to be a sign posted where you're zooming in from, in case somebody wants to watch you at the other.
So if someone wants to show where you are,
Yeah.
they can.
If they wanna come to Texas, they're more than welcome.
They won't, but that's what we're gonna do.
Maybe I'll come with you.
That's-
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we'll work
Chris and I are
out
going.
That's definitely
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
where are we going?
Fort Worth, baby.
I don't really like Fort Worth area.
Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session, please. So my motion made by Mrs. Humes, is there a
State the
second?
reason, Allison?
Hmm?
Can you just state the reason?
Oh, yeah. It's for collective negotiation pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Motion made by Mrs. Humes, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marucci, is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Humes?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lembeck?
Yes.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict?
Yes.
Thank you, Brittany.
You are welcome.
Will you be coming back out? and
Just to
maybe-
adjourn.
Just to adjourn.
Just to adjourn, so I think you're good.
Yep.